Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Blog Podcast. Today's Monday, September 17th, 2018. Today I'm going to recap yesterday's football action, talk about tonight's Bears-Seahawks game a little bit as well, go over yesterday's baseball games, look ahead to tonight's slate, baseball power rankings and players of the week, and then the college football power rankings prior to week 4. Here we go. NFL. Some interesting results, to say the least. Some surprises, some not so surprises. A lot of close games, some blowouts. The Falcons defeated the Panthers 31-24. I was correct picking the Falcons. They are 1-1, and so are the Panthers. Matt Ryan, good bounce back game. 23 of 28, 272 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Cam Newton, great game. 32 of 35, 335 yards, 3 touchdowns and a pick. Story of this game is that Cam Newton looked like he got concussed on a nasty hit. And then the player that got Cam Newton looked to be concussed, but it turned out that he was okay. Got ejected. That was a pretty nasty hit. But like I said, big win for Atlanta. Carolina, nothing really to overreact about. Their offense was good. Made that game interesting late and more competitive. And good job by the Falcons doing a better job in the red zone on offense against a good defense in Carolina. In one of the more surprising results of yesterday, the Colts defeated the Redskins 21-9 in FedEx Field. The Colts are 1-1 and so are the Redskins. Andrew Luck, 21 of 31, 179 yards, 2 touchdowns and 2 picks. Alex Smith, 33 of 46 with 292 yards. Maybe the Colts are better than we think, and maybe the Redskins were not as good as we thought they were week 1, and that makes the Cardinals look pretty bad. The Titans defeated the Texans 20-17 with Blaine Gabbert at quarterback, who went 13 of 20, 117 yards and a touchdown. Deshaun Watson, 22 of 32, 310 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Titans are now 1-1. Texans 0-2. Texans are under so much pressure now. There's some buzz that the first coach fired might be Bill O'Brien if they lose this upcoming Sunday to the Giants. We'll get to the Giants' ugly defeat in a couple of minutes. The Buccaneers defeated the Eagles 27-21. The Bucs are 2-0. The Eagles are 1-1. Ryan Fitzpatrick, 27 of 33, 402 yards, 4 touchdowns and a pick. Nick Foles, 35 of 48, 334 yards and a touchdown pass. Good news for the Eagles is that Carson Wentz is coming back on Sunday, and they should absolutely be rolling when he is back and on the field. He was the front runner for MVP last year, and then he got hurt. And now they get their franchise quarterback coming back next week. Meanwhile, Tampa Bay, another nice win. Maybe Dirk Cutter might have saved his job. Everyone thought that he was the most likely candidate for first coach fired because of all the off-season drama and whatnot with Jameis Winston. But who knows? Jameis Winston might have lost his starting quarterback job, and Dirk Cutter might have saved his job, courtesy of Fitzpatrick. The Chiefs defeated the Steelers 42-37. Huge win for Kansas City. They're 2-0. Pittsburgh's 0-1-1. Pat Mahomes, 23 of 28, 326 yards and 6 touchdown passes. Ben Roethlisberger, 39 of 60, 452 yards and 3 touchdown passes. Very impressive win for Kansas City. They look like the favorites in the AFC West. Yes, it's after 2 weeks, but the way they beat the Chargers and the way they beat the Steelers in the first 2 weeks, especially away from what is one of the best home field advantages in the sport at Arrowhead Stadium, for them to go on the road and pick off 2 of the perceived contenders in the AFC is pretty good. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh, they're a mess. No Le'Veon Bell. Yeah, this offense is putting up points, but this lingers over their team. Their defense clearly misses Ryan Shazier. Their defense hasn't been the same since he got hurt in that game. I believe it was against the Patriots. It was against the Bengals on a Monday night game in Cincinnati. And so that's that. And talk about candidates for first coach fired. Another one could very well be Mike Tomlin if they stumble next week against the surprising Buccaneers. Because who knows, maybe time has run its course with Tomlin and the Steelers. The Dolphins defeated the Jets 20-12. Good win for Miami. They're 2-0. Jets are 1-1. Ryan Tannehill, 17 of 23, 168 yards, 2 touchdowns. Sam Darnold, 25 for 41, 334 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. So, Sam Darnold looked a little bit like a rookie in this start. Although he put up the good numbers, the Jets just couldn't get in the end zone this week. The Chargers defeated the Bills 31-20. Huge win for the Chargers. Got Anthony Lynn a little bit off of the hot seat per se. They're 1-1. The Bills are 0-2. Phil Rivers, 23 of 27, 256 yards, 3 touchdowns. Josh Allen, 18 of 33, 245 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. So, good win for the Chargers, and bad news for them is that Joey Bosa is going to be out until October, apparently, so that's a big loss for that defense. The Vikings and the Packers ended up in a 29 tie, which I can't say that I'm disappointed in either team. I think both of these teams had chances to win this game. Both these teams looked pretty good. You can make a compelling argument, if not for the phantom roughing the passer call on Clay Matthews, the Packers would have won that game and would have prevented that Minnesota comeback to force overtime. And Daniel Carlson missed 2 field goals in overtime, including one from 35 as time expired, and now Carlson was cut, and Minnesota signs Dan Bailey, former Cowboy, who should have been signed by somebody in the preseason, or even in the offseason per se. And Green Bay's kicker, Mason Crosby, missed a couple critical field goals as well. So you can make a case Minnesota should have won, and then you could have made a case Green Bay should have won. They're both 1-0-1, and I'm not really disappointed in either team per se. I think both these teams are very good teams. So, in retrospect, I feel better about these two teams after a tie than I did with the Browns and the Steelers after their tie. Speaking of the Browns, they probably should have beaten the Saints yesterday, but no, the Saints defeated the Browns 21-18. Speaking of missed field goals, Zach Gonzalez missed a bunch of them and single-handedly cost them the game. On the go-ahead, on what looked to be the go-ahead touchdown, they tie the game on a touchdown. Tyrod Taylor to Antonio Callaway for 47 yards. Gonzalez misses the PAT. Then you're at 18 apiece. Then Will Lutz kicked the 44-yard field goal for New Orleans with 27 seconds left. And then Gonzalez missed one in the final seconds, and then the Saints held on. This was a fun game to watch in terms of drama. Drew Brees, 28 of 35, 243 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Taylor, 22 of 30, 246 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. And the Saints are 1-1, and the Cleveland Browns are 0-1-1. The 49ers defeated the Lions 30-27. Niners are 1-1. Detroit's 0-2. Jimmy Garoppolo, 18 of 26, 206 yards, 2 touchdowns. Matt Stafford, 34 of 53, 347 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So a good bounce-back game for Stafford, but the Lions fall short. Big one for them, and especially Matt Patricia next Sunday night as they host New England. I'm going to do Guess the Lines on tomorrow's podcast. The Rams defeated the Cardinals 34-0. Rams are 2-0. Cards are 0-2. You can make a case the Cardinals are the worst team in football. Jared Goff, 24 of 32, 354 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Sam Bradford, 17 of 27, 90 yards, and a pick. I wonder if Josh Rosen will start next week. against the Chicago Bears. And what I thought was the most impressive performance of the day, the Jaguars defeated the Patriots 31-20. Huge win for Jacksonville and Doug Marrone. They're 2-0. New England's 1-1. Blake Bortles had what I thought was one of the best games of his career. 29 of 45, 377 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 pick. Tom Brady, 24 of 35, 234 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I probably underrated this Jags team a little bit. I thought that they'd regress from last year, and I wasn't sold on Bortles, but it looks like I'm wrong. The Broncos defeated the Raiders 20-19. You can make a case Oakland should have won this game, but give credit to Denver for coming back, who's 2-0. Oakland's 0-2. Case Keenum, 19 of 35, 222 yards and a pick. Pat Lindsey has to be the surprise of football so far. Another great game for him. 14 carries, 107 yards. And he had a reception for 4 yards, too. So, you can make a case he's the biggest surprise player through 2 weeks of the season. He might be this year's Alvin Kamara, but I think that's also too soon to say. Derek Carr, 29 of 32, 288 yards and a touchdown pass. Sunday night, the Cowboys defeated the Giants 20-13. That score was deceiving. That was a 20-3 game, and then the Giants put up a touchdown and a field goal within the last minute and a half of the game. So that final score is deceiving. Dak Prescott, 16 of 25, 160 yards and a touchdown. Eli Manning, 33 of 44, 279 yards and a touchdown pass. The Cowboys are 1-1, the Giants are 0-2, and the Giants are another team that I think is in trouble. But to me, for them, I'll get into this more with the power rankings. I just think that their offensive line is still bad, especially on the right side with Eric Flowers at tackle. And Eli Manning hasn't been good for a couple years now. And the critics are still going to keep bickering about how they should have taken Sam Darnold over Saquon Barkley. Seahawks Bears tonight, 8:15 ESPN. On Friday, I said that the Bears would win this game. I still believe that. I think that the Bears pass rush has a distinct advantage tonight over that dreadful Seahawks offensive line. Talk about bad offensive lines. We just talked about the Giants. Seattle's is pretty darn bad too, and I think Russell Wilson's in for a long night tonight, just like Eli Manning had last night. So I just wouldn't be shocked if Wilson had a bad game here. And I think this is also a big spot for the Bears. I mean, if they don't win here, then people are going to be questioning Trubisky and whether he's a franchise quarterback for the future, and was Matt Nagy the right hire? And then if the Seahawks lose, then it's going to be like all the talk, as I mentioned, offensive line so bad and defense isn't the same, and Pete Carroll might be on the hot seat. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of those talks as well. So I'm very fascinated for tonight's game, and the Bears are actually now a 4-point favorite, so the line went up. Baseball. Some interesting results from yesterday. The Blue Jays came back to defeat the Yankees 3-2. The Yankees were up 2-1 most of the game. Blue Jays had a big eighth inning off of Dellin Betances. Jays are now 67-82. Yanks are 91-58. Thomas Pannone with the win. Betances with the loss. Ken Giles with the save. The O's defeated the White Sox 8-4. The O's are 43-106. The Sox are 59-90. Ryan Messinger with the win. Lucas Giolito with the loss. Paul Fry with the save. The Red Sox defeated the Mets 4-3. The Sox are 103-47. The Mets are 69-80. Brandon Workman with the win. Seth Lugo with the loss. Stephen Wright with the save. The Tigers defeated the Indians 6-4. The Tigers are 61-88. The Indians are 83-66. Francisco Liriano with the win. Shea Bieber with the loss. Shane Green with the save. That game, Cleveland rested all the regulars because they clinched the Central yesterday. So they're going to be resting people throughout the year. They have their eyes on October. I think they know their fate. They're going to be starting on the road in Houston against the Astros in the ALDS in what I think is going to be a series of the ages, perhaps, assuming that the Astros don't go on a magnificent run and steal the 1 seed away from Boston. The Rays defeated the A's 5-4 as the A's failed to take advantage of the Yankees losing again. Tampa's 82-66. The A's are 90-60. Andrew Kitteridge with the win. Mike Fiers with the left. Sergio Romo with the save. So the A's have lost 3 of their last 4. That's not great. The Nats defeated the Braves 6-4. Nats are 76-74. The Braves are 83-66. Tanner Roark with the win. Sean Newcomb with the loss. Sean Doolittle with the save. Bryce Harper's had a nice second half of the year. I'll get into the Nats a little bit when I do the baseball power rankings. The Marlins defeated the Phils 6-4. Marlins are 58-91. The Phillies are 76-74. Jose Arena with the win. Nick Pivetta with the loss. Pirates defeated the Brewers 3-2. Pirates are 74-74. The Brewers are 85-65. Trevor Williams with the win. Julius Chacin with the loss. Felipe Vasquez with the save. Astros defeated the Diamondbacks 5-4. Houston's 94-55. Arizona 78-72. Justin Verlander with the win. Zach Greinke with the loss. Roberto Osuna with the save. The Twins defeated the Royals 9-6. Is Minnesota's 68-81. Kansas City's 52-97. Kyle Gibson with the win. Jerry Vasto with the loss. The Reds defeated the Cubs 2-1. As the Reds are 64-86, the Cubs are 87-62. Luis Castillo with the win. Jose Quintana with the loss. Raciel Iglesias with the save. The Rockies defeated the Giants 3-2. The Rocks are 82-67. The Giants are 70-80. Antonio Sensatalo with the win. Derek Rodriguez with the loss. Wade Davis with the save. The Angels defeated the Mariners 4-3. The Angels are 74-76. Seattle's 82-67. Taylor Cole with the win. Nick Vincent with the loss. Ty Buttery with the save. The Padres defeated the Rangers 7-3 in the bottom of the ninth on a walk-off grand slam by Francisco Mejia, who was acquired in the Brad Hay and Adam Simber trade. That might end up being a win-win depending on how the Indians perform in this postseason. San Diego 60-90. Texas is 64-85. Kirby Yates with the win. Jeffrey Springs with the loss. Sunday Night Baseball, the Cards defeated the Dodgers 5-0. The Cards, much-needed win, 82-68. The Dodgers, 82-68. Adam Wainwright with the win. Ross Stripling with the loss. Tonight's games, 7 o'clock, Blue Jays O's. Ryan Baroque, and we don't know who's starting for Baltimore. Maybe they go with an opener. Mets Phillies. Zach Wheeler and Jake Arrieta. Royals Pirates. Brad Keller and Joe Musgrove. Twins Tigers. Gabriel Moya and Jordan Zimmerman. Nationals Marlins. Eric Feed and Trevor Richards. Cardinals Braves at 7:30. Miles Mikolas and Mike Falta Units. Reds Brewers. Anthony DeSclafani and Wade Miley. 8 o'clock Rays Rangers. Tyler Glasnow and Adrian Sampson. Sampson is your opener for the Rangers tonight. Mariners Astros. Wade LeBlanc and Framber Valdez. Cubs Diamondbacks. That's a fun series at 9:40. Kyle Hendricks at Patrick Corbin. That's a nice pitching matchup. 10 o'clock Rockies Dodgers. John Gray and Heijin Ryu. Huge series there for the Dodgers to get back in the first place in the division. Giants Padres. Andrew Suarez and Brian Mitchell. Baseball power rankings. I'm going to go from 30 to 1. As I do each and every week. 30 is the Baltimore Orioles playing out the string. They're the first team with 100 losses. They'll have the number 1 pick in the 2019 baseball draft. I'm interested to see what happens with Buck Showalter at the end of the year. And the theme of the power rankings for both college football this week and for baseball is overrated, underrated, or properly rated. And for the Orioles, this is easy. This is overrated in terms of preseason expectations and in terms of right now. My goodness. This team, a lot of people thought would finish in last, but nobody thought that they would have the worst record in baseball. 29th, the Kansas City Royals. They're playing out the string as well. They have some guys coming up and having impacts. Ned Yost, I wonder if his future is in doubt, as well as Buck Showalter's, as I mentioned. Overrated, underrated, properly rated. I think they're overrated. White Sox are at 28. They've been playing out the string as well. I think somebody that is being overlooked on this team a little bit is Adam Engel, who's provided good defense in the outfield for them, robbing a lot of home runs this year. And Daniel Palka is somebody who has come up and had an impact for them with the bat and is one of the more underrated rookies in the league. But from a preseason standpoint, this team, to me, is overrated. I thought this team was going to be a lot better, and they've fallen short of my expectations. 27 is the Miami Marlins, who are going to finish last place in the NL East like everybody thought. And Peter O'Brien is somebody that the Marlins brought in. He was a draft pick of the Yankees, didn't really pan out. They traded him to Arizona. I believe it was for Brandon McCarthy. And Arizona bailed on him, and now he's with Miami, and he's thriving right now, single-handedly winning them some games. In terms of overrated, underrated, properly rated, in terms of right now and what I thought they'd be this season, they're underrated to me. I thought this was going to be by far the worst team in baseball, and I couldn't have been more wrong. By far worst team in baseball is the Orioles, not the Marlins. And who knows, maybe Don Mattingly will be back next year. And I thought he was going to be fired at some point during the season, so I was wrong on the Marlins. Although they're still bad, I just didn't think they wouldn't have the worst record because I just thought that franchise was a mess. But they are a mess, but not as big as a mess as the Orioles per se right now. 26 is the Cincinnati Reds. They played out the string as well. Overrated, underrated, properly rated. They're another underrated to me. They're better than I thought this year. They started playing better baseball under their intern manager, who I'm surprised hasn't gotten the intern tag removed. Mike Schilt got the intern tag removed before Jim Riggleman, which surprised me. Although Schilt's team is probably headed to the postseason, despite some bad losses recently. But I'll get to the Cardinals soon. But the Reds to me are underrated. They have a lot of pieces in place, and they could be a surprise team next year. 25 is the Texas Rangers. They're a team that's playing out the string too. They're doing some openers now. Overrated, underrated, or properly rated. I'm actually going to take out the properly rated portion a little bit, because I haven't seen any yet. But to me, the Rangers, in terms of my expectations for them, I'd say overrated. I overrated them because I thought they would be better offensively. I thought that they'd actually wouldn't be awful, but I thought they'd be bad. But they're awful. So I overrated them. 24 is the San Diego Padres. They're playing out the string. They have a lot of young pieces in place. They're going to be a popular surprise team pick next season, I think. And I think they're a prime candidate to go out and make a big trade in the offseason for a marquee pitcher. They're going to have their eyes on the Mets guys, but who knows if the Mets will trade their guys. I'll get to the Mets in a minute. But they have a lot of young players in place. Francisco Mejia had the big grand slam yesterday. And I really think that this is a franchise heading in the right direction. But in terms of young talent and in exceeding my expectations, but this is a tough one. I might actually go with properly rated here, because some things cancel out others. Hunter Renfroe was a disappointment earlier in the season, but he's picked it up of late. So I guess they're a properly rated pick. 23 is the Detroit Tigers. They're playing out the string. Michael Fulmer's hurt again. That team, I think, is going to be bad again next year, perhaps. If I had to pick overrated, underrated, or properly rated for this team, I'd say overrated only because I actually thought that Miguel Cabrera would still be healthy and not producing like he used to, but being a tough out in some cases. And I thought that Michael Fulmer would be better. So, Tigers to me overrated. 22 Minnesota Twins. They're playing out the string too. Tyler Austin's been a good pickup in that Lance Lynn trade that sent Lance Lynn to the Yankees. But to me, the Twins were overrated. They ended up being a seller at the deadline. And the other case for their overrated is Miguel Sano and Byron Buxton are not the players they thought they were going to be. 21 is the Toronto Blue Jays. This might be a surprise team next year because Vlad Guerrero Jr. is special. That guy is going to be a monster in Major League Baseball and is going to hit and hit and hit. My only question with him is his defense and whether that will be accurate. But if I had to do overrated, underrated, properly rated with the Blue Jays for this season, it's overrated because just a lot of things didn't break their way this year. Marcus Stroman was hurt. Josh Donaldson didn't look like the same guy as he was even when he was playing for Toronto. Now he's over in Cleveland. J Happ was good for them, and he's been great for the Yankees. So I'd say overrated for Toronto. And some of the young players they acquired in trades haven't really panned out. We'll get to one of them in a couple of moments. You'll see why. But it's in a positive way. 20 is the San Francisco Giants. Boy, this was a tough call. I'd say overrated for them, considering that they just had an 11-game losing streak. Madison Bumgarner's not pitched as well as I thought he was when he came back from his injury. I think San Francisco should have traded him, and they didn't. I think that he's a prime candidate to be traded this offseason because his contract's up in 2019. And a lot of their other guys hadn't panned out. Evan Longoria hadn't panned out. Andrew McCutchen didn't pan out, and then they traded him to the Yankees. And their starting staff outside of Bumgarner hasn't been great either in terms of the big names. But in terms of the other guys like a Derek Rodriguez, even Derek Holland, those guys have actually exceeded expectations. But I think this team as a whole has failed to expectations, so I consider them overrated. Oh, this is an easy one. The New York Mets. They're probably the most overrated team in terms of expectations coming into the season. A lot of people thought that this was the second best team in the National League East. Nope. They're probably the fourth place team in that division, barring a big collapse by the Phillies and the Nationals down the stretch in terms of those two teams right now. But Mickey Callaway probably wasn't the right hire. Yoenis Cespedes is hurt the whole year. The only silver lining of their season is that Jacob deGrom's going to win the Cy Young. Todd Frazier hasn't panned out like the Mets thought. Anthony Swarzak's been a bust for them. Jay Bruce has been a bust. So if you go across the board, overrated. And I'd put that with an exclamation point. Here's another overrated at 18. That's the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. I thought this was a playoff team before the year. I was dead wrong. Shohei Ohtani's probably the silver lining of their season other than another Great year from Mike Trout. But now people are questioning whether the Angels should actually trade Mike Trout. I don't think he's going to be traded this winter. I'd be surprised if that were the case. But I think he's a free agent after 2020, so I think the 2019 winter would be the winter that they could possibly do it, not the 2018 winter. 17 is the Pittsburgh Pirates. To me, they're underrated this year, despite them being 500. I'm very surprised at how well they've exceeded expectations this year. Clint Hurdle's done a good job. Some of their players have bounced back from bad years last year. But the question for me is Chris Archer and whether he is the guy they think he is. 16 is the Washington Nationals. This is the most overrated team in baseball, period, end of story, probably in the world of sports. They have all these great players on their team, and they just fail every year. A top 3 pitcher in the game in Max Scherzer. A top 3 player in baseball in Bryce Harper. And you're hovering around 500 an entire season. That's just unacceptable, and that makes you overrated. And from what I'm told, Dave Martinez will be back next year, which isn't a huge surprise to me because the Nationals usually give their guys 2 years. Like, they gave Matt Williams 2 years. They gave Dusty Baker 2 years. So I'm not surprised that he'll, in all likelihood, be back next year. 15 is the Philadelphia Phillies. Boy, their season's fallen apart. But this is a tough one for me in terms of overrated, underrated, properly rated. But in terms of the preseason, I probably underrated this team. But right now, I could say that they're overrated because I thought this was a sneaky contender in the summer. But they traded for some veterans and hasn't really panned out. Their offense is not good. Rhys Hoskins on and off throughout the year. I'm not a huge Gabe Kapler fan either. But I think he actually has done a decent job this year other than some bullpen mishaps. 14th, the Seattle Mariners. In terms of before the season, I underrated them, but right now they're overrated for the same reasons as the Phillies. I wonder if Scott Servais is going to lose his job even though they're double digits over 500 because of that brawl that broke out in their dugout a few weeks ago. 13th, the St. Louis Cardinals. This is a tough one. I guess they're properly rated, but overrated in the summer, but underrated right now. But I'm going to go with properly rated because I had them in the playoffs before the season. But what's overrated might be Mike Matheny. Or I should say who, not what. But they got rid of Matheny. Mike Schill comes in, and this team goes from out of the race to in the race. So I think this team could possibly be headed for big things in October if the matchups break right for them. 12 is the Arizona Diamondbacks. This was a tough call for me in terms of overrated, underrated, properly rated. I'm going to say they're properly rated. I did not pick them to make the playoffs before the year. They have some great players on their team, but it looks like they won't make the playoffs this year. I might have been right on that prediction. My next one's underrated, and that's the Colorado Rockies. This was a team that I thought was going to regress from last year. I couldn't have been more wrong. It looked like I was right for the first part of the summer, but after the All-Star break, this team took off. They're in first place right now. I don't know if that will last. I don't know if this team will actually make the playoffs, but I have to give Bud Black credit. I think he's done a great job this year and has to be in the conversation for National League Manager of the Year again. Number 10 is the New York Yankees. This is the most polarizing, overrated, underrated, properly rated on any team for me because they are 33 over 500 right now and have been playing 500 baseball over their last 60 games or so. So that's your case for overrated. Your underrated case is that they've been missing Aaron Judge's bat for a month and a half now, and that team went to tank. So there's your underrated case, and that's what makes Aaron Judge so special and underrated in Judge's case, and which really made Aaron Judge look like he should have been the MVP last year, although the Astros without Altuve were bad, and their fans were saying, oh, this was proven that Altuve should have been MVP, but I think it should have been Judge last year, personally, and it's really has shown ever since he was hit by the pitch by Jacob Junis. So I'm going to go with properly rated for the Yankees because it's just too hard to determine overrated, underrated, properly rated for them, although you could argue both ends. 9 is the Braves, who are in first place in their division. They're underrated to me. They really wet the bed against the Red Sox and rebounded really nicely after that and looked like they're going to win the National League East. I think they know their destiny. I think they're going to be the 3 seed in the National League facing the winner of the National League West. Or you never know if the Brewers steal the division from the Cubs. I mean, there's a lot of things in play. I don't think it's a lock that they're the 3 seed. They could be the 2 seed hosting the NL West winner. But I think they know their destiny. They're not going to be the 1 seed. They'll probably be 2 or 3. 8's the Milwaukee Brewers. They don't know their destiny yet. They can win that division because the Cubs have really not played well of late. And the Brewers have. And the Brewers beat the Cubs in that series to start the week. Number 7 is the Oakland Athletics. They lost 2 out of 3 to the Rays. They failed to take advantage of the Yankees. Or also would have had them in the top 5. The Rays are 6, and they're not even going to make the playoffs. And that's saying a lot about Tampa Bay and how great of a spoiler team they are. They're going to be a popular playoff pick next year, assuming they don't trade anybody away like they did last winter. 5 is the Los Angeles Dodgers. Big series win over the Cardinals. I can't fault them for last night because the Cardinals absolutely had to have that game. Number 4 is the Chicago Cubs, who I think are kind of in trouble in terms of this division. I don't think they'll miss the playoffs, but I think there's a chance that they blow the division. In terms of overrated, underrated, properly rated with the 8 through 4 list, Brewers, I'm going to say properly rated because I had them as a playoff team before the year. And obviously A's and Rays underrated. Dodgers, I'm going to say a little overrated even though they just took a big series from St. Louis. But in terms of preseason expectations, I'm going to say overrated for the Dodgers. Cubs properly rated. They're like in that Yankees conversation of I think they know their destiny. They're kind of playing a little possum. Chris Bryant really hasn't been the same since before getting hurt. So there's a lot of Cubs-Yankees parallels. But I just think the Cubs one is getting undercovered and the Yankee one is being overblown. So the Cubs and Yankees are properly rated. Braves underrated. Brewers properly rated. Rays and A's underrated, and Dodgers overrated. 3 is the Cleveland Indians. This team knows their destiny. They're going to be the 3 seed, going up against, in all likelihood, the Houston Astros in the ALDS. I talked about it before. This team is underrated, in my opinion, and I don't think they're getting the attention they deserve. I think they can absolutely beat anybody in a playoff series with their improved bullpen, and with that pitching staff, Trevor Bauer's coming back, and there's talks that he's going to be in the bullpen for the playoffs, which is interesting. That tells me that they believe in Shane Bieber, which I believe in Shane Bieber too. I think he's pretty good. I think he'll be an American League Rookie of the Year, top 5 potential on people's ballots. He's definitely a top 10 AL rookie this year. So their postseason rotation would be Corey Kluber, Bieber, Mike Clevenger, and maybe Carlos Carrasco? But yeah, there's talks about Bauer to the bullpen, which I think is enticing. It's pretty much what St. Louis did with Carlos Martinez, and that's worked out so far. And I think it's going to work out for them down the road if they make the playoffs, because their playoff rotation The way Adam Wainwright looked last night, maybe he'll be a part of that, along with Miles Mikolas, who I think they'll start in the wild card game if they make that. And with Jack Flaherty and maybe John Gant or maybe Michael Wacha if he's back. So the Cardinals have some options too. But yeah, the Indians to me are very underrated. 2, the Houston Astros, I'm going to say they're properly rated because they're what I thought they were going to be. And I think they're pretty much know their fate. They're going to win that division. Even though Oakland can't be slept on really, but Oakland I think blew a chance this weekend to creep up to Houston. And Houston got a big win yesterday against the Diamondbacks. And number 1's the Red Sox to me. I'm going to say they're overrated. Yeah, you heard me. And this is for one sole reason. That's because they failed to fix their biggest weakness at the trade deadline, which was the bullpen behind Craig Kimbrell. Joe Kelly has been a disaster in the second half of the year. Matt Barnes can't be trusted in a big spot. Stephen Wright, I think, is an interesting wrinkle, and he got the save yesterday against the Mets. So I wonder if they'll use him out of the bullpen. Nathan Eovaldi's been a flop as a trade acquisition. Eduardo Rodriguez hasn't looked right since coming off the disabled list. Chris Sale has been great this year, but we need to see it in the playoffs. They'll probably win a round. They'll probably beat the Yankees or the A's in the American League Division Series, assuming they're all healthy. But I don't think right now I'm confident in saying that they beat the Indians or the Astros in the playoff series. But they're number 1 on my power rankings because they have the best record in the game. All right, players of the week, real quick. Yasiel Puig, he had 5 homers in a 24-hour span, so he gets it. And American League, I'm going to go with Randall Grichuk of the Blue Jays. Single-handedly beat the Yankees. He had the go-ahead hit in yesterday's game, and he had 2 home runs on Saturday. So single-handedly beat the Yankees was Randall Grichuk of the Blue Jays. Props to him. Or else the Yankees would have swept Toronto. Now I'm going to do my college football power rankings. I'm going to go from 130 to 1, as I usually do. Same theme, overrated, underrated, properly rated. 130 is UTEP, they're overrated. They're the worst team in the country. 129 San Jose State, they're overrated. They're really bad. They lost a home game to an FCS team, and so did UTEP. Oh, this is a very overrated team. 128 is Massachusetts. I thought they'd be improved. They're not. 127 is New Mexico State, overrated. 126 Texas State. I would just say overrated, although properly rated can make a case. And the same for Rice at number 125. 124 is Georgia State. I think they're overrated. That's not a bowl team. 123 is Kent State. To me, they're a little underrated. Although they got blown out by Penn State, they actually have shown some promise in their other games. 122 is Bowling Green. They're overrated. 121 is UConn. They're overrated. Oh, this is a very overrated team at 120, and that's Old Dominion. 119 is Louisiana. I think they're overrated. 118 is SMU. They're very overrated. 117 is Western Kentucky. They're probably the most overrated team in CUSA. 116 is South Alabama. Tough call, but I'm going to go with properly rated for them. 115 is Georgia Southern. Same. I'm going to go properly. Oh, this is an underrated, and that's Charlotte at 114. They're much better than I expected so far, but I'm keeping them low in the power rankings. I'm going to believe it when I see it. But yeah, right now, the Charlotte 49ers are an underrated football team. I'm going to do overrated, underrated, properly rated again in 3 weeks from today after week 6. So I'm going to do it at every 4th mark of the season. So right now, Charlotte, underrated. 113 Central Michigan, overrated. 112 Miami of Ohio, overrated. 111 Coastal Carolina, underrated. 110 New Mexico, I'm going to say underrated. This team's better than I thought it was going to be so far, at least. Talk about overrated. 109 Wyoming. 108 UNLV. Let's go properly rated for now. 107 Marshall, properly rated. 106 FIU, underrated. 105 North Carolina, overrated. Oh, this is a very overrated team. 104 Rutgers. 103 Liberty, underrated. They've looked much better than I expected so far. I'm pretty much judging them on the Old Dominion win, but still, I'm saying underrated for Liberty. 102 is Western Michigan, overrated. 101 East Carolina. I'm going to go underrated here. Although properly rated, you can make a case for because their game against Vatek got canceled. 100 is Tulsa, overrated to me. 99 Tulane, properly rated. 98 UTSA. Yeah, they're 0-3, but I'm going to say properly rated. They were supposed to lose all three of those games. They were big underdogs in all three. I think they eventually have a little turnaround going. 97 Colorado State, very overrated, despite the win over Arkansas. 96 Ball State, I'm going to say underrated for them. 95 Southern Miss, properly rated. 94 UL Monroe, underrated. 93 Middle Tennessee, overrated, despite losing the games they were supposed to lose. 92 is Northern Illinois. I'm going to say they're overrated. Their offense does not look good. 91 UIB. This is a hard one, so I'm going to go with properly rated because I did not expect them to lose the Coastal Carolina. And they were an underdog against Tulane, although I picked UAB over Tulane. 90 Illinois. This is a hard one. I'm actually going to say underrated because they were much more competitive than I thought they were going to be against South Florida, despite that game being at Soldier Field. Big Ten play is going to tell us a lot about the Fighting Illini and whether Lovie Smith could potentially save his job or not. 89 is Kansas. I'm going to say it. They're underrated. They should have beaten Nicholls State. But Nicholls State is actually one of the better teams in the FCS. So maybe that wasn't an awful loss. They destroyed Central Michigan and they destroyed Rutgers. And Dave Beatty deserves credit for that. I do not think that, in all likelihood, they'll win a game in Big 12 play. But if they're competitive in Big 12 play, you got to give Dave Beatty some prop. 88 is UCLA. They're very overrated. 87 Arkansas. They're very overrated too. 86 Air Force. Underrated. 85 Akron. Underrated. Big upset win over Northwestern. 84 Louisiana Tech. I'm going to say properly rated. 83 Tennessee. Hard one, but properly rated. 82 Georgia Tech. Overrated. 81 Florida State. Capital Very, overrated. This team is probably the most overrated team in college football. 80 Oregon State, underrated. They're much better than I thought. They were competitive with Nevada. They took care of the FCS team at home, and they put up some points in Columbus. So don't be fooled by Oregon State. I think they can win some Pac-12 games this year when folks don't expect them. 79 is Toledo. I'm going to say properly rated for now. 78 is FAU. I'm going to say overrated because of that bad performance against Oklahoma. I thought they'd be a little bit more competitive than that. And as well as only playing Air Force pretty close. Maybe Air Force is better than we think. But right now FAU is overrated, and they have a tough one this week against UCF. 77 is Purdue. Overrated with an exclamation point. Yes, they've lost 3 close games, but they're overrated. They're not the team we thought. Northwestern's overrated too. They just lost at home to Akron and lost at home to Duke 2 weeks ago. 75 is Ohio. Tough call, but I'm going to say properly rated. Although you could argue underrated or overrated too, so that's why they're properly rated. 74 is Eastern Michigan. I'm going to say they're underrated. Despite losing last week at Buffalo, they were competitive in that game, and they were on the road. But this might be one of the better teams in the MAC that we wouldn't have expected. 73 is Nevada. Tough call here, but I'm going to say overrated because I thought they'd be a little bit more competitive with Vandy, and I thought that they were going to blow out Oregon State. Like I said, Oregon State's underrated. Let's say Nevada's overrated. 72 is Utah State. I think they're underrated and could perhaps make some noise in the Mountain West this year. 71 is Fresno State. I'm going to say that they are properly rated. 70 is Hawaii. They're very underrated, despite losing at Army last week. 69 Maryland. We learned the answer on Saturday, and that's very overrated. 68 is Temple. Overrated. 67 Virginia. Overrated. 66 Baylor. I'm going to say underrated for now, even though they lost at home to Duke. I think Big 12 play will say a lot more about Baylor. I just think that Baylor lost to a better team. That's all. 65 Army, underrated. 64 Buffalo, underrated. 63 Arizona, very overrated. 62 Nebraska, overrated. 61 Kansas State, overrated. 60 Troy. If this was last week, I would have said overrated this week. Now I'm going to say properly rated. They upset Nebraska, which was a big win for that program. 59 Arkansas State, let's say underrated. 58 App State, underrated. 57 North Texas, underrated. 56 Memphis, overrated. 55 Navy, properly rated. 54 Louisville, overrated. Although that's pretty much judging them on the Alabama game. 53 Wake Forest, overrated. 52 Pitt, overrated. Although, again, same thing with Louisville. This is probably just looking at the Penn State game. 51 Iowa State, tough call, but I'm going to say properly rated right now. They just had 2 hard games on their schedule. 50 Vanderbilt, I'm going to say underrated. They could have beaten Notre Dame, and they beat their first 2 opponents in, I believe it was Nevada and Middle Tennessee. 49 is Florida. I'm going to say they're overrated. 48 is Houston. They're overrated. Maybe I would have said underrated last week, but I just didn't like how they looked against Texas Tech. 47 Cincinnati. I'm going to say they're underrated. I just don't think they're getting respect that they deserve. 46 South Florida. I would have said underrated last week. Now I think overrated. I just don't like that in Fighting Illinois team that I'm not a huge fan of hung around against South Florida. So I'm going to say South Florida is overrated. 45 Indiana, I'm going to say properly rated. 44 Washington State, underrated. They're a better team than I thought. 44 BYU, tough call. I think they could have easily lost the Wisconsin game and the Arizona game. And they could have easily won against Cal. So tough call. I'm going to say properly. 42 Minnesota, underrated. 41 Ole Miss. Am I going to judge them on the Bama game? I'm going to say properly rated. I just think that was a bad spot for them on Saturday against the best team in the country. 40 South Carolina. Tough call. Am I going to judge them on the Georgia game? Yeah, let's say they're properly rated. 39 Utah. I'm going to say overrated. I do not like how they looked offensively in any of their games. 38 Iowa. This might look foolish next week, but I'm going to say underrated. 37 Texas Tech. They are, I think, are improving. This is tough. Am I going to judge them on the Ole Miss game? I'm going to say they're properly rated because I properly rated Ole Miss. And they're ahead of Ole Miss on the power rankings this week. It's probably just an overreaction. 36 Cal. Tough call. I'm going to say underrated. This is easy. 35 USC, overrated. 34 Arizona State. I'm going to say overrated despite the big Michigan State win. I'm just still not a Herm Edwards fan, and I just don't think they're as good as the other teams in their conference. 33 is Kentucky. I'm going to say they're underrated. I like this team a lot. 32 Missouri, overrated. 31 Colorado, underrated. 30 San Diego State, put this in caps, underrated. 29 Duke, underrated. It showed last week at Baylor because everybody loved Baylor. Not so fast. 28 Michigan State, overrated. 27 Texas A&M, underrated. Could be 3-0 right now, but that's okay. 26, Syracuse, underrated. 25, NC State, overrated. 24, Boston College, underrated. 23, Texas, tough call. Am I going to judge them on Maryland or USC? Let's say properly rated. 22, Boise State. Am I going to judge them on Troy or Oklahoma State? Let's say properly rated. 21, Wisconsin, overrated. 20, TCU. I'm going to say overrated. I'm going to judge them on Ohio State. 19, Miami, overrated. Probably judging them on LSU there. 18, Oregon, properly rated. 17, Michigan, overrated. 16, Oklahoma State, underrated. 15, UCF, overrated. Got to play some good teams there, UCF. 14, Mississippi State, I think underrated. 13, West Virginia, I'm going to say properly rated. If they had played that NC State game, we would have learned more about the Mountaineers. Let's hope that game gets rescheduled, because I think if it doesn't, it can hurt the Mountaineers' playoff chances down the road, and perhaps the Wolfpack, if the Wolfpack are indeed a surprise in the ACC, which I doubt. 12, Virginia Tech, properly rated. I think that for the same reason as West Virginia, I would have liked to seen them play East Carolina on the road and see how they handle that atmosphere. 11, Auburn, overrated. 10, Penn State, properly rated. 9, Washington, overrated. 8, Notre Dame, overrated. 7, Stanford, underrated. 6, LSU, underrated. 5, Oklahoma, properly rated. 4, Ohio State, underrated. 3, Georgia, properly rated. 2, Clemson's properly rated. And Alabama's properly rated too, I think. And now, before I go, I'm going to do guess the lines for week 3. I want to try to be quick here with this. This is always fun to do. Some interesting games this coming week in college football. We're going to start with Thursday night. Tulsa at Temple. Temple, I picked to be a 4.5-point favorite, and they're favored by 7. Friday night, 16th ranked UCF hosting FAU. I had UCF by 15.5. UCF is laying 13.5. Number 10, Penn State at Illinois. I have Penn State laying 20.5. Penn State's actually laying 28.5. Friday night, USC hosting Washington State. I have the Trojans by 6 over the Huskies. And the Trojans are laying only 3.5. Saturday games. Georgia is at Missouri. And I think Georgia is laying 16. And Georgia is laying 14.5, which seems okay. Number 8, Notre Dame at Wake Forest. Possible trap game for the Irish, who I think should be laying 13 at Wake, and they're only laying 8. Nebraska at Michigan. I have the Wolverines laying 20.5. And the Wolverines are laying 18.5. So I was 2 points off on that line. Boston College at Purdue. I have the 23rd ranked team in the country laying 8.5 at Purdue. And BC is laying 6.5. Buffalo at Rutgers. I have Buffalo laying 1. They're laying 4.5. Minnesota at Maryland. I have the Gophers laying 3. And that's exactly... I'm sorry, not the Gophers laying 3. I had the Terrapins laying 3, and that's exactly what it is. And I actually like the Gophers in this spot on the road. Arkansas at Iowa State, I have the Cyclones laying 12.5. They're laying 18.5. Nevada at Toledo, I have Toledo -2. Toledo is actually -10.5, which I think is lunacy. Ohio at Cincinnati, I have Cincinnati laying 7.5. Cincinnati's laying 8. Navy at SMU, I have Navy laying 6.5, and Navy's laying 7.5. Kent State Ole Miss, I have the Rebels laying 27.5. Ole Miss is laying 28.5 point off there. Pitt at North Carolina, I have the Tar Heels laying 3. Pitt's actually laying 4.5, so I was way off there. I was 7.5 points off there. Louisville at Virginia, I have the Cardinals laying 3, and actually the Cavs are favored by 5.5. I just thought that they'd favor Louisville in that spot. Western Michigan at Georgia State, I have the Broncos laying 4.5, and they're laying 7.5, so 3 points off there. Miami of Ohio at Bowling Green, I have the Redbirds laying 3.5. They're laying 5, so 1.5 off there. Western Kentucky at Ball State, I have Ball State laying 5. Ball State's laying 3.5. Texas A&M at number 1 Alabama. I'm actually skipping the FCS games. I have the Crimson Tide laying 20, and the Crimson Tide is actually laying 27, so I was a touchdown off there. Number 2, Clemson at Georgia Tech. I have Clemson laying 23.5. Clemson's only laying 17. Tulane at Ohio State. I have the 4th-ranked team in the country laying 31. They're laying 35, so 4 points off there. Kansas State at 12th-ranked West Virginia. I have the Mountaineers laying 10.5. They're laying 16. 13th-ranked Virginia Tech at Old Dominion. I have the Hokies laying 18.5, and the Hokies are laying 27. FIU at number 21 Miami. I have Miami laying 18. Miami's laying 26.5. Kansas at Baylor by 10. Baylor's giving 7.5. Charlotte UMass I have as a pick'em. This was my biggest drop-off or layoff. Charlotte is -14. That's a lot of respect for the 49ers. That says what they think about the Minutemen. Northern Illinois at Florida State, I have the Seminoles laying 12. The Seminoles are laying 10. Arizona and Oregon State, I have the Wildcats laying a touchdown. They're laying 6.5, so I was a half point off there. UConn at Syracuse, I have the Orange by 25. The Orange are laying 27.5. So I was a little off there, by not that much. South Carolina at Vandy, I have the Gamecocks by 1.5, and the Gamecocks are favored by 2.5. Number 17, TCU at Texas, I have the Longhorns by 2, and the Horned Frogs are actually favored by 3 on the road. North Texas at Liberty, I said North Texas by 10.5. North Texas is -14. Army and Oklahoma, I should say number 5 ranked Oklahoma. I have the Sooners by 24.5. Sooners are favored by a touchdown more, 31.5. Louisiana Tech at number 6 ranked LSU, I have the Tigers by 20. Tigers are actually favored by 20. Good job by me. Mississippi State at Kentucky, I have the 14th ranked team in the country, favored by 7.5. And they're favored by 10. Texas Tech at Oklahoma State, I have the Cowboys by 13. Cowboys are favored by 13. Good job by me. Again, Florida, Tennessee, I have Tennessee getting 5 at home, and they are getting 4.5 at home, so a half point off there. Rice at Southern Miss, I have Southern Miss by 15.5. Southern Miss is favored by 14.5, so 1 point off. Texas State at UTSA, I have the Roadrunners favored by 16.5. They're favored by 7.5, so I was off there. UNLV at Arkansas State, I have the Red Wolves by 9. Red Wolves are favored by 8, 1 point off. Coastal Carolina at Louisiana. They're just Louisiana now, I keep forgetting that. I have Louisiana favored by 10. They're only favored by 5, and I actually like Coastal Carolina in that spot. Troy at UL Monroe, I have UL Monroe as a 2.5 point favorite, and Troy is -6.5. Arkansas is at number 9 Auburn. I have Auburn by 16.5. Auburn is favored by 28. I think that's too high. 24 Michigan State at Indiana. I have Michigan State -6.5. And Michigan's favored by 4.5. I'm sorry, Michigan State. New Mexico State at UTEP I have as a pick'em. Battle of arguably the 2 worst teams in the sport. New Mexico State's a 3 point favorite. Number 7, Stanford. At number 20, Oregon, I have the Ducks by 3. Tough call. And Stanford's a 2-point favorite, which I don't have a problem with it. I just thought that the home team would be favored in that spot. I have South Florida giving 16 to East Carolina. South Florida's giving 24. I think that's a lot. South Alabama at Memphis. I have Memphis minus 24.5. Memphis is minus 28, so I was a little off there. Number 18, Wisconsin at Iowa. I have Wisconsin by 3. Wisconsin's favored by 3.5. Air Force at Utah State. I have Utah State by 8. Utah State by 10.5. Arizona State at number 10, Washington. I have Washington by 13.5. Washington's favored by 17.5. Eastern Michigan at San Diego State. I have the Aztecs by 15. Aztecs are favored by 10. And that's Guess the Lines for you today, and that's it for today's podcast. I'll be back tomorrow recapping Monday Night Football between the Seahawks and the Bears. Baseball, look at tomorrow's baseball games. I'll do my NFL power rankings. And I'll also be doing the start of my NHL preview. The NHL season starts in 2 weeks from now. Not from today, but about 2 weeks from now. So I'm going to do my goalie rankings, which should be fun. And the rest of the week I got, for Wednesday, I have the centerman rankings for hockey, the 2008 NFL redraft. I'm going to bring back some redrafts a little bit. And I'm going to do the wing ranks on Thursday for NHL. And I'll do my bold projections for week 4 of the college season, and obviously pick the college games and the football game being played on that day. Friday, all the picks. Saturday, I'm going to do my NHL coach rankings. Sunday, I'm going to do my NHL GM rankings, as well as my college football recap. I hope you guys have a great day, everybody.